We all agreed, "You're not welcome at the wedding." That was the sentence. The exact words, spoken slowly, deliberately by my own mother as she looked me straight in the eye across the living room I once helped her renovate. There was no tremble in her voice, no hesitation in her gaze, just finality, and maybe even a trace of triumph. For a second, I didn't speak. I couldn't. It was like my body had disconnected from itself. My mouth was dry, but my palms were sweating. My heart? Not racing, just stunned, numb. I stood there, 32 years old, dressed in a blazer I wore straight from the office, carrying a folder of wedding details I thought we'd be reviewing together. Instead, I was being dismissed from my own sister's life, officially, permanently, and with unanimous family approval. My name is Alyssa Grant. I'm the eldest daughter in the Grant family, a senior financial consultant at a firm in downtown Denver. I manage multi-million-dollar portfolios, advise CEOs on risk management, and navigate volatile markets like it's second nature. But none of that prepared me for the emotional minefield of being told by my own mother that I was no longer welcome in my family's biggest celebration, or my sister's. The irony? I had funded most of that celebration. My younger sister Chloe and I grew up inseparable. We shared bunk beds, Halloween costumes, and heartbreaks. She made me promise, at age 12, that I would be her maid of honor when the day came. And when that day did come, when Ryan slipped a ring on her finger and she squealed down the phone, "Alyssa, it's happening. You're my MOH, right?" I didn't hesitate. I jumped in head first. Thousands of dollars, dozens of weekends, countless hours. That's what I gave to Chloe's wedding, not just as a sister, but as her confidant, her planner, her protector, only to find out too late that someone else had been rewriting my role in the story. And the woman holding the pen was our mother. Chloe was always the sunshine, blonde, bubbly, artistic, the kind of girl who turned every school project into a masterpiece and every holiday card into a watercolor. Our mom, Meredith, adored her for it. She'd brag to friends about Chloe's paintings being gallery-worthy, while calling my straight A's expected. I was the practical one, the problem solver, the responsible older sister, and that responsibility started early. When our dad, Charles, quietly removed himself from conflict by hiding behind newspapers and yard work, I became the buffer between my mother's sharp tongue and Chloe's sensitive heart. I was the one who helped Chloe finish science projects, who stayed up late helping her study for geometry when she cried over angles, who drove her to art camp in Boulder every summer even when I had internships. I didn't mind. She was my little sister, my best friend. In college, Chloe pursued art history while I chose finance. Our paths diverged, but we never lost touch. I helped her budget, reviewed her lease when she moved into her first apartment, and filled in the financial gaps when our parents forgot to send her tuition on time. I didn't resent it. Not then. It felt like love, like loyalty. Over the years, I became the unofficial treasurer of the Grant family. When the roof leaked, I arranged the contractor. When Mom's credit card debt hit $12,000, I quietly paid it off in monthly chunks so it wouldn't ruin her credit. Birthdays, holidays, emergencies, I covered it all. My salary wasn't bottomless, but I made it work. Because family meant showing up. Always. So when Chloe called me with that ecstatic, breathless voice, saying Ryan had proposed, and I was going to be her maid of honor, I felt like it had all been worth it. Everything I'd ever given. Every moment. Every dollar. I pictured us laughing over centerpieces, sipping wine while choosing bridesmaid dresses, dancing at the reception together. I was going to be her person, like always, and for a while it really felt like I was. It started small, like all shifts in power do. One weekend in March, I stopped by Mom's house for our usual wedding check-in. I had a binder of notes, vendors, sample menus, even a spreadsheet comparing venues based on guest capacity, lighting, and cost. Chloe had loved it. She even joked I should go into wedding planning. But when I walked in that day, Mom was already mid-conversation on speakerphone with the venue. The Aspen Ridge Estate, she said with a kind of rehearsed cheeriness. Yes, we'll send the deposit today. My daughter's getting married there this July. I stood there, blinking. Wait, Aspen Ridge? I thought Chloe and I were still comparing venues. Mom didn't even look at me. They had a cancellation. It's destiny. Then, turning to Chloe, she added with a smile, Sweetheart, it's the most picturesque backdrop for wedding photos. You'll look like a fairy tale. Chloe hesitated, glancing at me. It is beautiful, Liz. I bit my tongue. Maybe it was a harmless shortcut. Maybe Mom was just excited. I could adjust. But it didn't stop there. Vendors I had spent hours vetting were dismissed in favor of Meredith's friends. The lavender and ivory color palette Chloe and I had chosen turned into blush and gold overnight. The playlist we built together? Gone. Replaced by a string quartet Mom claimed was more elegant. And every time I raised a concern, Chloe would shrug with that apologetic smile. Mom's paying for a lot. It's just easier this way. I still paid for things, big things. The photographer Chloe adored, but Mom deemed too expensive? I covered the deposit. Custom welcome baskets for guests? I ordered them. I even started planning their honeymoon in secret, booking a private villa in Bali, because I wanted Chloe to feel the kind of magic she deserved. But somewhere between the decisions I made and the ones being made for me, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years, like a guest in my own sister's life. And worse, like I was being quietly replaced. I found out about the dress appointment from my co-worker. It was a Wednesday morning. I was in the break room reheating soup when Natalie, who happened to be friends with the boutique owner, smiled and said, Hey, I heard Chloe found her wedding dress. Sandra said it was love at first sight. The plastic spoon in my hand stopped midair. What appointment? Natalie's smile faded. Oh, I just assumed you were there. Your mom, Chloe, and your cousin, Sienna? They were at Elegant Moments for hours yesterday. Champagne, tears, the whole thing. Sandra said it was beautiful. I muttered something about a last-minute client call, then walked straight into the restroom and locked the door. For 10 minutes, I just stood there, staring at the white tile wall, trying to wrap my head around what I'd just heard. Chloe and I had talked about dress shopping since we were teenagers, pretending pillowcases were veils, rating bridal gowns in magazines. I was supposed to be there. It was always going to be us. That night I called her. Hey, how was the dress appointment? A pause. Too long. Oh, it just kinda happened. Mom had a fitting scheduled for Sienna and asked Chloe to tag along. We didn't think it'd be the real thing. But then she found one she loved. And no one thought to call me? I asked quietly. I didn't want to make it a big deal, Chloe said, her voice paper-thin. There will be plenty of other wedding stuff you can be part of. But there wasn't. The bridal shower? Planned without me. The bachelorette party? Organized entirely by Sienna, who picked a spa resort Chloe had zero interest in. The emails dried up. The group chats skipped me. Even our Sunday brunches faded into silence. Crazy week, she'd say, texting an hour before. Rain check. Still, I stayed involved. I confirmed the honeymoon villa, paid for upgrades, ordered matching robes for the bridesmaids, even though I hadn't been told what size to order for myself. Because deep down, I was still hoping we'd laugh about this one day. That it was all just a misunderstanding, a stressful blur she didn't know how to manage. But I was wrong, and I didn't know how wrong until that Thursday night. I showed up at my parents' house that Thursday evening with a folder full of budgets and vendor notes. I thought Chloe and I were going to have a heart-to-heart, talk through the weirdness, fix it, maybe laugh, maybe cry, but leave with clarity. Instead, I walked into a staged ambush. Dad was already in his armchair, looking more pale than usual. Chloe sat on the edge of the couch, fingers twisting in her lap. Mom stood behind her, hand perched on the backrest like she was presenting a defendant in court. And Sienna, yes, Sienna, was in my usual spot, on the armrest, smug, but trying to look concerned. What's going on? I asked, still standing, still holding my folder. Chloe? I thought this was between us. Mom was the first to speak. Of course she was. There's something you need to understand about the wedding, Alyssa, she began, her voice syrupy and condescending. We've been discussing things as a family, and we all agreed that your involvement has become problematic. I blinked. Problematic? What does that even mean? Mom smiled like she was reading from a script. Your controlling behavior, your tendency to make everything about yourself, the way you throw money around to gain influence. It's become toxic. I turned to Chloe. Is that really how you feel? She looked up at me, finally, and her expression was a tragic blend of guilt and detachment. It's just been really stressful, Alyssa. Every time you get involved, there's tension. Mom thinks, she started, but I cut in softly. What do you think, Chloe? Before she could answer, Mom stepped forward, blocking my view. What Chloe wants is a peaceful wedding, and your presence would make that impossible. I stood there, frozen. Then Mom said it, the line she'd clearly been waiting to deliver. We all agreed. You're not welcome at the wedding. Not as maid of honor, not as a bridesmaid, not even as a guest. Silence. No one moved. Not Dad, not Sienna, not Chloe. I looked at each of them, one by one, and no one said a word. So I did the only thing I could. I nodded once, turned around, and walked out the door. I didn't cry right away. Not in the car. Not even when I pulled over because the road blurred too much through my windshield. Not when I unlocked the front door of my apartment, dropped my bag, and saw Evan standing there with hope in his eyes that evaporated the second he saw my face. I only cried when I tried to speak, and nothing came out but a sound I didn't recognize. A mixture of grief, rage, and something sharper, clarity. I told him everything. The script, the smirk, the silence from Chloe. And for once, I didn't try to explain it away. I just let it be what it was, a betrayal. They can't do this, Evan said, gripping my hand. You've done nothing but support them. Apparently, I whispered, that doesn't matter. The next morning, before the sun even rose, I opened my laptop, logged into my bank. With calm fingers, I transferred $8,600, the exact amount of the honeymoon I had booked, back into my personal savings. Then I pulled up the airline confirmation, the resort contract, and the itinerary for the private chef and waterfall tour. One by one, I canceled everything. I sent the travel agent a brief message. The plans have changed. Please confirm cancellation. Then I called my credit card company. Hi. Yes. I'd like to report unauthorized charges. A family member has been using my card for purchases I never approved. It was only half a lie. I never gave Mom permission to order extra decor and upgraded linens with my card. By 7 a.m., I had untangled myself financially from the wedding I was no longer welcome at. And then I turned off my phone. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was liberating. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was chasing a moving target. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't hoping to be seen or heard or invited back in. I was simply reclaiming what was mine. The text came at 3:42 a.m. I'm so sorry, Alyssa. Mom's been lying to me. Ryan, and I just found out what she did with the honeymoon. Please call me. I need my sister back. I stared at it for a long time, not moving, not breathing. It didn't feel real. After everything, this was the first sign of Chloe cracking through the fog? The first moment she reached for me without Mom in the room? My hands shook as I put the phone down. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. I needed answers before I opened my heart again. They came faster than I expected. That afternoon, my phone rang again. Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Then again. On the fourth try, I picked up. Lisa, it's Ryan. Thank God. Please don't hang up. I know everything's a mess. But you need to hear this. My voice was flat. Go on. He inhaled slowly. Your mother faked texts. She created a contact in Chloe's phone with her number, but your name. Every time you texted Chloe, she intercepted it. And then she replied to herself, pretending to be you. I froze. She showed Chloe fake conversations, told her you hated the wedding, that you thought her dress was trashy, that you were too busy with your career to help. My stomach turned, and Chloe believed that. She did, because Meredith made it believable, showed her screenshots, deleted your real messages. She even changed calendar invites to make it look like you declined everything. I didn't know what to say. And the honeymoon? I asked. Chloe didn't know, he said. Meredith told her you were holding it hostage, that you canceled it out of spite. But when the refund alert came to Chloe's email, she finally started asking questions. That's when we found everything. There was a long silence. Then he added, she's devastated. She wants to talk. She wants to fix it. I stared out the window at the Denver skyline, cold light settling over the buildings like dust. For months, I thought I was losing my sister. Turns out, she'd been taken from me, too. We met at Aunt Linda's house 2 nights later. It wasn't spontaneous. I planned every detail. I invited Dad, our grandmother, Chloe and Ryan, Aunt Linda, and Uncle Paul, the people who had the most power and the most to lose from silence. And I brought a folder. Not one full of budgets and wedding spreadsheets like before. This one held screenshots, bank transfers, email receipts, and a timeline no one could ignore. Chloe arrived first. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just softer, dimmed. Thank you for coming, I said simply. I should have come a long time ago, she whispered. When the others arrived, I didn't waste time. I placed the folder on the table, opened it, and began. I'm not here for drama. I'm here for truth. I showed them everything. The real messages I'd sent. The bank records for the honeymoon. The cancellations. The charges Mom made using my card without consent. Chloe showed them the fake texts Meredith had used to poison everything between us. Aunt Linda, watching with folded arms, murmured, She did the same thing to me before she married your father. Dad said nothing for a long time. His hands shook in his lap. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. But when I was done, when the last page had been turned, he cleared his throat. I knew some of it, he admitted, voice low. Not all, but enough that I should have said something years ago. I thought I was keeping the peace. He looked directly at me for the first time in weeks. But silence is just complicity when harm is happening. And Alyssa, I'm so sorry. I failed you. Then Mom arrived. She had been told this was a budget meeting. When she walked in and saw the circle of faces, the open folder, the tight silence, she froze. What is this? A chance, I said, to tell the truth, or at least to hear it. She didn't confess. Not immediately. She deflected, accused, played the victim. But it didn't work this time. The evidence was too clear. The room too tired of her games. And when Chloe stood up and said, If Alyssa's not in my wedding, then neither are you, something finally cracked. Even Dad, gentle, avoidant Dad, looked her in the eye and said, This stops now. The week leading up to the wedding felt like a different kind of whirlwind. Mom didn't apologize. Not really. She agreed, grudgingly, to the new boundaries. She would attend the wedding, but she would not speak with vendors, not handle any logistics, not manipulate anyone behind the scenes. She could show up, smile, sit in her assigned seat. Nothing more. She called it cruel. I called it overdue. Dad surprised me. He didn't just support the new rules, he enforced them, quietly but firmly. At first, I thought it was guilt. But one night, over tea on my balcony, he said, I'm just tired, Alyssa, of watching my daughters hurt each other to keep your mother happy. And maybe, for the first time, he was finally putting his children before the illusion of peace. As for Chloe and me, we rebuilt. Slowly. We cried through conversations. We unpacked the years Mom had pitted us against each other. We promised to be better sisters now, not perfect, but honest. I reinstated my role as maid of honor, but with a different mindset. No more overextending. No more proving. Just presence. I rebooked a smaller honeymoon package, still generous, but no longer extravagant. This is a gift, I told Chloe and Ryan. No strings, just love. The wedding was beautiful. Not perfect, but real. Chloe looked radiant. Ryan cried through his vows. I stood beside my sister, bouquet in hand, no longer trying to be everything, just being me. Mom kept her distance. She smiled for the photos, but there was a stiffness in her posture, like she didn't know how to function without control. That wasn't my problem anymore. After the wedding, Chloe and I continued our healing. I started therapy, learned to say no, learned that love without boundaries isn't noble, it's self-erasure. Evan and I got engaged a few months later. When we started planning our wedding, I looked him in the eye and said, "Small committee, clear rules, no chaos." He laughed. Deal. And maybe that's what I learned most through all of this. That family doesn't mean unconditional access to your time, your money, or your soul. Sometimes the most loving thing you can say is, "This is where I end, and you do not get to enter without permission." "I'm home early," Jason called out as the door slammed shut behind him. His voice was clipped, colder than the wind that swept through Portland that November evening. I froze mid-stitch, a strand of wire and a half-finished pendant dangling between my fingers. It was only 7:15. He wasn't supposed to be home until 9. My heart jumped. That perfume again. Sharp floral, expensive. Not mine. I tucked the tools back into their tray, placed the unfinished necklace beside my sketch pad, and quietly stepped out of the guest room that doubled as my workspace. Noah had finally fallen asleep in my arms less than an hour ago. He always took longer on stormy nights. 5 years old, yet still needed me to hum until his lashes stopped fluttering. I crept toward the hallway, adjusting the throw blanket around my shoulders. Jason was standing in the entryway, tall, broad-shouldered, hair perfectly styled like he'd stepped out of a magazine. His navy wool coat was dusted with the damp chill of outside. He didn't look at me, just shrugged off the coat and let it fall carelessly onto the bench. "You're early," I said carefully, trying not to sound accusing. "Meeting got canceled," he muttered. Then, spotting the faint light coming from the guest room, he added, "Let me guess. You're still playing with your little beads and wires." I flinched. "I'm working on a gift for Lauren's birthday." Jason walked straight past me into the living room, pausing at my table. His jaw clenched as he eyed the organized trays, the label boxes, the notebook with my sketches. "This again," he muttered, his voice dipped in contempt. "How much money have you wasted on this nonsense?" "I used leftover materials. It's just for a friend." He picked up a pendant with a pair of tweezers and examined it like it was some disease under a microscope. "Do you even know what real gemstones cost? This looks like something a kid would glue together in art class." I took a deep breath. It's not about the materials. It's the design. The meaning behind. "Oh my God, Lauren!" he snapped, dropping the piece back onto the table. "Every time I walk into this house, it's like being swallowed by a kindergarten craft room. Beads on the floor, chicken casserole in the oven, toys everywhere. You used to be interesting." That stung deeper than I expected. I folded my arms across my chest, holding myself together. "I work a full shift at the store. I take care of Noah, and I use the evenings to do something that makes me feel alive. I'm doing my best, Jason." He turned to face me, his eyes sharp. "Your best? You're a cashier at a bead shop, Lauren. That's not a career. That's a cry for help. Meanwhile, I'm breaking my back every day to provide for this house while you waste time stringing fake pearls like it's therapy. I never asked for a mansion. I just want peace. A roof, our son, and a little time to breathe." Jason laughed, bitter and low. "Peace? That's rich. You think this," he gestured around the room, is peace. This is suffocation. I walk in, and all I see is you in your stretched out sweatpants, no makeup, hair tied up like some frazzled PTA mom. And I wonder, how the hell did I end up here? I stood still, the weight of his words crashing over me. We have a child, Jason. We're a family. No, we're a prison sentence with a bedtime routine, he hissed. You used to be fun. You used to be sexy. Now all you care about is sleep schedules and discount groceries. And don't even get me started on Noah's daycare. God knows what kind of germs he brings home from those runny-nosed kids. We can't afford private preschool, I whispered. You know that. I make good money, he shot back. But we're still broke because everything goes into diapers and casseroles and your stupid wire hobby. Jason, please, I said, my voice barely above a breath. Don't talk about our son like he's an expense. He walked past me into the kitchen, opened the fridge, slammed it shut. Nothing good again. I'll eat in the city. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process what was happening, when he turned and threw it all at me. You know what? Let's stop pretending. I don't love this life anymore. And I sure as hell don't love what you've become. His voice dropped, almost gleeful. You want to know why I'm coming home late, Lauren? Why I don't touch you anymore? Because I already checked out months ago. The air left my lungs. There's someone else, he said flatly. Her name's Tessa. She actually takes care of herself. She listens. She doesn't smell like glue and toddler wipes. And she doesn't drag around a 5-year-old like an anchor. I couldn't breathe. I backed into the wall behind me, needing something solid. No one wants a woman with baggage like you, Jason said, cruelly calm. You're a burden, Lauren, and you're not my burden anymore. He turned and walked to our bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag he'd apparently packed earlier, and tossed it over his shoulder. I'm staying with Tessa tonight. You've got a month to get out. This place belongs to my parents. They'll be back from Europe in December. They want you gone before then. He walked to the door, paused, and looked over his shoulder. And don't even think about dragging me to court. You won't get anything. I'll give you the minimum. He was gone before I could say another word. The door slammed behind him like the lid on a coffin. And I stood there in the living room, my arms wrapped around myself, staring at my work table, now feeling like a crime scene. Somewhere down the hall, Noah stirred in his sleep, murmuring softly, sensing the shift in the air. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My hands were trembling too hard, my jaw too clenched. I walked over to the work table and slowly began to pick up the scattered beads he'd knocked to the floor. One by one. Silver, blue, pearl. He said no one would want me, that I was just a cashier with a kid and a hobby. Maybe he was right. But as I clutched the wire-wrapped pendant I hadn't finished, something inside me refused to shatter completely. I looked toward the hallway, where Noah slept peacefully, unaware that everything had changed. Maybe I was broken, but I wasn't done. The morning after Jason left, I woke up on the couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes. My back ached. My mouth was dry. For a moment, I didn't remember why the house was so quiet, until I sat up and saw the empty space where his coat usually hung. The suitcase he'd packed was gone. The door was still locked, but the cold draft near the threshold told me it had been opened in the middle of the night. I hadn't imagined it. He was gone. I walked to the kitchen, made a pot of coffee with shaking hands, and sat at the dining table, staring at nothing. My eyes drifted to the floor. Beads were still scattered near the wall. Tiny pieces of a life I had built in stolen hours after bedtime. I didn't have the strength to pick them up yet. Noah padded into the kitchen in his pajamas, holding his stuffed rabbit by one ear. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" I swallowed. He had to leave early for work, baby. Noah looked unconvinced, but he didn't press. I poured him a bowl of cereal and kissed the top of his head, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. Jason had forgotten his phone. It was lying face down on the console table by the front door. I wasn't looking for anything. I just wanted to plug it in before it died. But when I picked it up, the screen lit up one unread message. Tessa, I missed you last night. Please come by, even if just for a little while. I made that pasta you like. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't understand, but because part of me still hoped there'd been a mistake, a misunderstanding, a terrible fight we could come back from. There wasn't. That night, I waited for him. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted a confession. Maybe I just wanted to see if he would look me in the eye and tell me again that I wasn't enough. The lock turned just before midnight. Jason stepped inside, surprised to find the lights on. I was sitting in the armchair, still and silent, like a statue that refused to crumble. "What is this?" he asked. "Some kind of drama?" "You left your phone," I said calmly. His expression changed. Not fear, not guilt, just annoyance. "So what? You went through it." "You left it unlocked," I replied. "I didn't have to dig." He exhaled and shrugged off his coat. "Look, Lauren, I don't want to fight." "Too late," I said, standing up. "Her name is Tessa. She works at your office. It's been going on for for months." "Right." He gave me a sideways glance. "Why does it matter?" My voice shook, because while I was up all night with a sick child, you were out building a life with someone else. Because I thought maybe we could fix this. I blamed myself. I begged you to talk to me, and you were already gone. Jason didn't respond right away. He walked to the living room, glanced at the guest room, and then turned to me with a cold smile. "You still don't get it, do you?" He moved closer. "Look at you. Always tired. Always stretched thin. Sweatpants. Crumbs on your shirt. When's the last time you looked like someone I'd want to come home to?" I said nothing. Meanwhile, Tessa actually cares about how she looks. She doesn't whine. She doesn't turn every conversation into a parenting podcast. She's not dragging around a 5-year-old like a damn trailer hitch. The words hit harder than a slap, but I stood still. "We have a child, Jason," I said quietly. "A beautiful, kind boy who adores you." Jason scoffed. "And who limits everything. Our freedom, our budget, our sex life. Honestly, Lauren, this isn't what I signed up for." "You're his father." "I'm not saying I'll abandon him," he muttered. "I'll pay child support. I'll take him on weekends when I can." "When you can?" I echoed. "It's not that simple," he said, already walking toward the hallway. "I've got meetings, I've got clients, You've got excuses," I cut in. He spun around. "Don't try to guilt me. You're the one who clung to this dead marriage. You and your beads and your casseroles and your clingy little sob story. No wonder I wanted out." I took a deep breath. My chest burned. I wasn't even crying anymore. Jason moved toward the guest room. "I'm grabbing the rest of my stuff. Don't worry, I'll be out of your way soon." He paused by the work table, then knocked a tray to the ground with a swipe of his arm. "There. Now it looks like it's worth something." I dropped to my knees, trying to gather the spilled pieces, but he wasn't done. He kicked the wooden box that held my finished pieces. It cracked against the wall. Pendants and bracelets scattered across the floor like confetti from a broken dream. I stared at the damage, at everything I had poured myself into, now treated like garbage. Jason leaned down, picked up my sketchbook, flipped through it with one hand. "These drawings," he sneered. "You think someone would actually buy this stuff? You think this is art?" He dropped the book. "You're a cashier with a hobby, Lauren. Who the hell do you think you are?" I stood slowly. My hands were shaking, but my spine was straight. "Get out." He blinked. "What?" I said, "Get out." He laughed, loud and bitter. "This is my parents' house, sweetheart. You don't make the rules. In fact, you're the one who needs to start packing. You're a suitcase without a handle. And Noah, he's the trailer. You're nothing but extra weight." Silence felt like a guillotine. My eyes didn't leave his. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. "How dare you," I said softly. "Call your own son that." Jason looked away. Noah's voice broke the silence. "Mommy." He stood in the hallway, rubbing his eyes, holding his rabbit. "Is Daddy mad?" I walked to him, knelt down, wrapped my arms around his small body. "No, baby," I whispered, my voice catching. "Daddy just has to go." Jason didn't say another word. He grabbed his duffel, opened the door, and stepped out. No apology, no glance back. The door shut with a hollow thud. A photo fell from the wall behind him, the one from our wedding day. The glass cracked in a perfect line across our faces. I sat down on the floor among the broken beads and wire. For the first time, I let myself fall apart. But only for a moment. Because tomorrow I'd start picking up the pieces. My mother lived in a one-bedroom apartment on the north side of Portland, tucked above a laundromat that buzzed all day and clanged all night. The walls were thin, the radiator hissed, and the windows fogged from the inside when it rained. But she had space on her pull-out sofa, and that was more than I had. "You can take my bed," she said the night we moved in. "Noah and I will manage out here." "I'm not kicking you out of your own room," I told her. "We'll make it work." She gave me a look, but didn't argue. That was her love language, offering things wrapped in practicality and grumbles. We'd never been the kind of family that said, "I love you" out loud. But that night, when she handed Noah a fresh pair of pajamas and told him she'd warmed the blankets in the dryer, I saw it in her eyes. For the next 2 weeks, I worked mornings at the craft supply store, dropped Noah off at Rosewood Daycare, and spent the evenings hunting for a second job. Cashier, waitress, janitorial, anything that paid. The problem wasn't experience, it was availability. No one wanted to hire a single mom who could only work after 6 p.m. At night, when Noah was asleep and my mother was watching game shows in the living room, I would sit on the floor beside my plastic craft box and try to create something that didn't look like desperation. One Thursday afternoon, my coworker Lauren Fields leaned across the register and said, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" I blinked. "Surviving." She smiled. "You should come with me to the Portland Artisan Market. I reserved a table weeks ago, but my sister bailed last minute. You can split the space with me." "I don't sell my stuff," I said immediately. "You make beautiful things, Lauren." "They're just gifts. For birthdays. For fun." She tilted her head. "Fun is good, but you need rent money, right?" That hit harder than I thought it would. "I don't know if anyone would buy it," I mumbled. "You won't know unless you try." That night, I stayed up late digging through my boxes. I didn't have inventory, just a few bracelets, a handful of pendants, some wire-wrapped earrings that hadn't been destroyed in the wreckage of Jason's tantrum. I wiped each piece clean, labeled them with handwritten tags, and packed them into a shoebox. My mother watched silently from the doorway. "You're doing this?" "I'm going to try." She crossed her arms. "You'd have better luck applying to that new supermarket downtown. They're hiring night shift stalkers." "I need this," I said simply. She didn't understand, but that was okay. She didn't have to. The next morning, I buttoned up the only clean blouse I had left and braided my hair back. I packed Noah's backpack with snacks and coloring books, and we walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. "Are we going to sell your shiny things?" he asked. "Maybe," I said, squeezing his little hand. "If we're lucky." The market was in a park just off Burnside Street, lined with pop-up tents and rows of folding tables. The air smelled like cider and roasted nuts. Families strolled past with paper bags, toddlers riding on shoulders, music drifting from a nearby guitar player. Lauren had already set up her half of the table with crocheted toys and knit scarves. I laid out my modest collection on a black cloth, silver wire, blue glass beads, a tiny pendant shaped like a moon. My hands were trembling. Lauren bumped my elbow gently. "Stop shaking. You look like you're about to confess to a crime." "I feel like I'm about to be laughed at." "No one's laughing." But I wasn't convinced. I watched shoppers drift past, pausing at booths with elaborate displays, rows of polished stones and laser-cut wooden signs. My table looked like a garage sale in comparison. At one point, I glanced over and couldn't find Noah. Panic clawed up my throat until I spotted him on a bench nearby, flipping through his dinosaur bookmister. Rabbit perched beside him. He looked so small, his legs swinging over the edge, unaware of how much of my life was balanced on this moment. Around midday, a woman stopped in front of my table. She picked up a dragonfly brooch, studied it in the light, and said, "This is beautiful. How much?" My voice cracked. $3.50. She smiled. "I'll take it. My sister will love it." I wrapped it in tissue paper with shaking hands. She paid in cash and walked away. I stared at the money in my palm. It wasn't much, but it was something. By the end of the day, I'd sold 2 more bracelets and a pair of earrings. Not enough to change our lives, but enough to feel like I existed, like I mattered, like someone, somewhere, saw worth in what I created. Noah ran back to the table holding 2 ice creams. "One for you," he beamed. "Where did you get money for this?" "From my book money." And the man at the stand said moms should have treats too. I took the cone, and for the first time in weeks I laughed. I didn't know it yet, but that little moment, sticky fingers, melted sugar, and 3 pieces of sold jewelry, was the beginning of everything. 2 weeks after that first market, I found myself standing at the same folding table, this time with 5 new pairs of earrings, 2 necklaces, and a fresh batch of wire-wrapped rings I'd stayed up making between Noah's bedtime stories and my own exhaustion. It still didn't look like much, but it was more than before. Lauren had brought a thermos of coffee and handed me a cup without asking. "You keep showing up. That's what matters," she said. I nodded and sipped, watching the crowd slowly grow as the morning sun chased away the last of the fog. A man stopped at our table, well-dressed, early 40s maybe, with a clean black coat and the kind of calm presence that makes people step aside without knowing why. He didn't speak at first, just studied my pieces with quiet concentration. His eyes lingered on a ring wrapped in rose gold wire around a milky white stone. It wasn't perfect. The wire had a tiny kink near the setting, but I'd left it in because something about the imperfection felt human. He picked it up and held it toward the light. "Did you make this?" I nodded. "Yes, all of them." "What's the stone?" "Opalite," I said. "Synthetic, but it catches light beautifully." He turned it over between his fingers. "Do you usually work with base metals?" "Right now I use what I can afford." He glanced at me. "You sell anywhere else besides this market?" "No," I said honestly. "I work part-time. I make pieces at night. This isn't a business yet." He smiled faintly, then handed me a card. "Ethan Cole, Sterling Grace Jewelry." I blinked. "The Sterling Grace? In Riverstone Galleria." He nodded. "We feature local designers. We rotate collections every quarter. I'm looking for someone with original vision, someone who understands detail." I stared at the card. It felt too heavy for a piece of cardstock. "You're serious?" "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." He paused, then added, "I'm not offering a fairy tale. We'd start with a trial. 10 pieces. If they sell, we talk next steps." "Interested?" My brain scrambled. I can't afford high-end materials, and I work another job." "We'll supply the stones and metals. You bring the hands and the heart." That part caught me off guard. The heart. "I don't have a studio," I said. "You seem to be doing just fine without one." He looked at the rest of the table, then met my eyes. "Call me Monday." Then he walked away. Lauren turned to me, mouth slightly open. "Did that just happen?" I stared at the card in my hand. "I think it did." When Monday came, I called. My voice shook when I asked for Mr. Cole, but his assistant was kind, and within 2 days I found myself standing inside Sterling Grace. Walls of glass, marble counters, light bouncing off crystals like stars trapped in stone. Ethan met me in a back room that smelled like leather and lavender polish. He slid a box across the table, small stones, wire spools, tiny bags labeled with price codes. Use these. Keep track of hours. Sketch designs before you start. I picked up a teardrop of smoky quartz. It felt cool and ancient in my palm. 10 pieces. I confirmed. Yes. And if they don't sell? Then we thank you, pay for your time, and move on. Fair. Firm. But not unkind. The next few weeks were a blur of balancing acts. Day job, Noah's daycare, grocery runs, late nights shaping wire under a desk lamp while my son slept beside me on the sofa. My fingers blistered. My eyes ached. But the designs came. Not rushed. Not copied. Mine. I named each piece after something I missed. Twilight wind. First snow, quiet courage. When I dropped off the box, Ethan barely looked up. We'll display them next week. I tried not to hope, not to imagine someone touching one of my necklaces and feeling what I felt when I made it. But that Saturday the call came. 3 pieces sold on the first day, his assistant said. Mr. Cole asked if you could bring more. I sat on the edge of my mother's bathtub, phone pressed to my ear, heart racing. Noah was in the other room, giggling as my mother tried to brush his hair. I could hear the soft rhythm of a life that wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Tell him yes, I whispered. Tell him I'll bring 5 more. Because for the first time since Jason walked out, someone didn't just see what I made. He saw me. 6 months later, I passed Jason at the grocery store. He didn't see me at first. He was near the deli counter, pacing in front of the glass case, phone to his ear, barking into the receiver about a missing reservation. His coat was wrinkled. His hair, once meticulously styled, now looked like he'd been running his hands through it all day. I wouldn't have even recognized him if he hadn't turned slightly and laughed. That laugh, sharp, arrogant, dismissive, I used to flinch when I heard it. This time I didn't flinch. I was standing 3 feet away, holding a bag of apples, Noah beside me tugging at my coat, asking if we could get juice boxes. Jason turned again and froze. He blinked. Lauren. I nodded. Hey. His eyes moved over me, confused. I wasn't in sweatpants. I wasn't hiding behind a grocery cart or looking at the floor. I was in a long camel coat, scarf tucked neatly, makeup soft but certain. My posture was different, straighter. I didn't feel like I needed to apologize for taking up space. You look different, he said. I am, I replied. Noah waved at him politely. Hi, Daddy. Jason bent down, hesitated, then gave him a stiff hug. Hey, buddy, you're getting so big. Noah pointed to the bracelet on my wrist. Gold wire, single lapis stone. Mommy made that. Jason looked at it, then at me again. You're still doing the bead thing. I smiled. It's not a thing anymore. It's a job. I design for sterling grace now. That made him pause. Seriously? The store in the Galleria? Yep. He looked like he was trying to do math in his head. They just let you work there. They saw something in me, I said simply. Jason adjusted his collar. Well, good for you, I guess. There was something in his voice, a tightness, not pride, not curiosity, resentment. I waited for him to ask more. He didn't. Instead, he checked his phone and muttered, Tessa's waiting in the car. I nodded. Of course. He looked at me one more time, then said, You look well. Thanks, I replied. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt the full weight of my spine supporting me, not out of defense, but because I was whole. Later that week, Ethan invited me to a dinner celebrating the opening of a new Sterling Grace location. You've sold 43 pieces in the last 3 months, he said. People ask for your work by name. I didn't know what to say. He held out a small box. This is from the team. Inside was a pendant, moonstone in a silver teardrop setting, minimalist and perfect. On the back, etched in delicate script, You were always enough. My throat closed. Ethan watched me for a moment. You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just surprised." "You shouldn't be." At dinner, I sat at a table with other designers, people who'd spent years in studios, schools, boutiques. I expected to feel out of place. I didn't. They asked about my process, my inspirations. One woman leaned over and whispered, "Your ring design? Quiet courage?" I bought one for my sister. She cried when she opened it. And just like that, I belonged. After dinner, as we stood beneath string lights on the restaurant's terrace, Ethan walked up beside me. "How are you really doing?" he asked. I thought for a second. "Better than I've ever been." He nodded. "That's good. You've worked for it." I looked at him. "Why did you stop at my booth that day?" He smiled. "Because I saw someone who hadn't realized how brilliant she was yet." I laughed softly. "That sounds like a line." "It's not," he said. "Trust me, I don't use lines. I offer opportunities. But with you, Lauren, I saw more than potential. I saw strength. And something told me if she gets one shot, she'll take it." I looked at the stars above, then back at him. "Thank you." "You don't owe me thanks," he replied. "Just keep making beautiful things." The next day, I added 3 new pieces to the Sterling Grace spring collection. One of them I named after the storm. A simple bracelet, twisted silver, a single citron stone, and a tiny charm shaped like a door opening. Jason didn't ask for joint custody again. He saw Noah every other weekend when he remembered. Tessa stopped coming to drop-offs. I heard from someone that they'd broken up. It didn't matter. What mattered was this. I'd stopped measuring my worth through someone else's eyes. I had found my hands again, my fire, my voice. And in the quiet moments when Noah was curled beside me and the apartment smelled like lavender and melted wax, I would look at the pieces I had created and whisper to myself. I was never a burden. I was a beginning. About a year after Jason left, I received a letter from his lawyer. It was thin, 1 page, printed in a generic serif font. He was filing to reduce child support, claiming financial hardship. He'd lost his job. Sterling Grace, meanwhile, had just asked me to sign a 1-year exclusive designer contract. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stared at the paper in my kitchen, Noah playing with toy dinosaurs at the table behind me, and thought about everything Jason had walked away from. A family, a woman who would have done anything to build a life together, a son who once waited by the window every Sunday, then stopped asking why the car didn't come. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I took a deep breath, folded the letter back into its envelope, and slid it under a stack of mail I didn't plan to answer right away. That same week, I was invited to speak at a local design school. Just a 10-minute talk about wire artistry and emotional storytelling in jewelry. I almost said no. Who was I to stand in front of students and pretend I had wisdom to give? But Ethan said, "Just tell your story. That's the part they'll remember." So I did. I told them about a woman who used to hide bruises behind makeup and make excuses for a man who mocked her dreams. I told them how I made jewelry on the floor of a cramped apartment while my son slept beside me and my mother quietly judged from the kitchen. I told them how the first customer to buy one of my rings didn't just pay $3.50. She gave me a reason to keep going. When I finished, a girl in the front row raised her hand. "How did you get brave enough to leave him?" The room went still. I smiled gently. I didn't feel brave. I just felt tired. And then I remembered that being tired isn't the same as being weak. Sometimes it's the body's way of saying, "It's time." Afterward, she waited to speak to me privately. She was young, maybe 19, wearing sleeves that didn't match the weather. She didn't say much, just handed me a note, folded 4 times. Later that night, I read it. It said, "Thank you for reminding me that broken doesn't mean worthless." I kept that note in the back of my sketchbook. A few weeks later, Sterling Grace hosted a gala. It was their biggest event of the year. Velvet dresses, champagne, glass pedestals displaying collections from their top 5 designers. One of those pedestals held a necklace I'd made called Reclaim. It had taken me 14 hours to finish. Twisted brass, raw emerald, a single line etched across the metal back. Not yours to define. Guests walked by admiring it, murmuring words like bold and unexpected. I stood near the corner with Ethan, a glass of sparkling water in hand, still unsure how I belonged in a room full of people who used words like legacy and luxury without irony. Then I saw him. Jason. He wasn't on the guest list. He stood by the far entrance, looking unsure, hands stuffed in his pockets, scanning the room until his eyes found mine. Ethan noticed. "Friend of yours?" "Ex-husband," I said, not bothering to soften it. Jason made his way over, slower than I remembered him moving in crowds. No arrogance this time, no polished charm. "I didn't know you'd be here," I said. "I wasn't invited," he replied. I saw your name in a write-up. Portland Weekly. You're kind of a big deal now." "I'm doing all right," I said. He looked at the necklace behind me. "You made that?" "Yes." He studied it for a long time. "It's intense. It's honest." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't understand it. "Not really." "You look different," he said again. "Like someone else." I smiled. "No, Jason. I just stopped being who you told me I was." He looked down, quiet for a moment. "I messed up." "You did." I know what you thought," I cut in. "That I'd break. That I'd fold without you. That I had nothing left after you walked out." He didn't deny it. "Well," I said, turning slightly so the light caught the pendant, "I made something out of what you threw away." Jason didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I nodded once and walked back toward Ethan, who was still watching from a distance. When I reached him, he offered me a new glass. "You okay?" he asked. "Better than okay," I said. "I'm finished." That night, when I tucked Noah into bed, he asked, "Are you happy now?" I kissed his forehead. "Yeah, I think I am." Because healing isn't loud. It's not applause or public revenge. It's choosing quietly and steadily to rebuild. And I had.